please take roll.
Cup,
Here.
Voorhees,
Yo.
Leahy,
Here.
Gampa,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Godis,
Here.
Ingraham.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I want to announce one agenda change. Item 17, which is the vacation rentals, is going to be moved up to follow the consent agenda, and the expectation is that it is going to be tabled to a future council meeting. So if you're here for that item, I'm giving you that heads up about that. Although you may want to wait until after we actually vote on the tabling, because stranger things have happened. So, Shelly, would you please identify if you have any conflicts of interest on this evening's agenda?
I do not. Thank you.
I have no conflicts of interest on tonight's agenda.
No.
I also have no conflicts.
No. No.
No conflicts.
All right. At this point, I would invite anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the council about any item that is not on this evening's agenda to go ahead and come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and try and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Hi, I'm Miles Rovig, 547 Sunny Acres Road, Glenwood Springs. I was going to wait for the VRBO topic, but I guess I'll take this opportunity to say something since I'm here now, if that's okay. So we've lived in the area for 27 years. We have had rentals all during that time. I'm not a big landlord, but I've provided housing to probably 6 or 7 people, families at a time over those years. We've rented at the market level, but not crazy. We've always tried to keep the rent affordable to folks with families, with children, because our houses have always been neat, clean, someplace that I would live if I wanted to live in that house. So we provided a good service for all of those years. The general population, typically about 60% of that population will own their homes. About 40% will rent. I believe that it's important for folks who need to rent, must rent, have to rent, to be able to have some good opportunity to have housing in wherever they live. On the other hand, there's also the aspect of risk. We have taken risk for more than 30 years since we first bought a rental home. It was not easy to buy that first house. My wife and I worked 3 and 4 jobs between us in order to make sure we made that payment and kept the house rented and in good condition. So now we find that for the first time last year, we decided we would enter into a VRBO enterprise. And I had resisted that for quite some time because I had preferred long-term rentals. However, this seemed like an opportunity that would provide another type of housing that has been acceptable all over the world. We've used them many times graciously and fortunately in places that we've traveled, and they've helped us because we're a family that at one time numbered 6, still do, but many times we had more than 6 people. Oh gosh, here's that light. So anyway, we have provided now housing for families to come to Glenwood for one house, just over $200 a night, whereas a family of 6 or 7 or 8 would have to rent 2 hotel rooms. So we're providing a service for families who can come here for that amount of money instead of having to pay $400 to $800 for 2 hotel rooms where they would not be able to come to Glenwood, and that is a service that I think we provide. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Bonnie Cradaville, and I'm here along with my fellow board members this evening to appear on behalf of the Glenwood Springs Arts Council. We wanted to take an opportunity on the record to thank you all for the grant which you gave us in 2018. And we'd like to give you a little information about all the good that came from that act. All of you are aware that at the closure in 2017 of the Glenwood Center of the Arts left the Arts Council with a huge debt to its employees and to the artists and to the businesses in our community. The City Council generously made sure the teachers did not suffer by paying their back wages, but the Arts Council was left with a large and seemingly insurmountable mountain of debts. In January of last year, the membership of the Arts Council held their annual meeting, and at that meeting the question was asked, should Glenwood Springs Arts Council continue to exist or should it just fold? Well, the resounding answer was yes, we will continue to exist, and we will restore this venerable 35-year-old organization. So that night, a new board of directors was elected and undertook the daunting task with the support and the backing of its members. And with the help of these people over the last year, we've been able to accomplish quite a bit in 2018. First of all, we held our popular 6x6 show in February of 2018. And I personally was astounded. It was my first event with the group by the volunteers and the attendance that made it such a financial and a social success. That on the opening night, where we had the show at a local business office, we were met by people waiting in the snow for us to open the doors so they could come in and see the art, which was the art of the children of Glenwood. We then went on to produce the 18th annual Culinary Festival at the Hotel Colorado in October of 2018. Again, we had the help of generous contributions on the part of local businesses, wonderful groups of volunteers, artists, the restaurants, and the spirits vendors. It was a resounding success also. Everyone had a great time eating, drinking, listening to the sounds of Valley Musico, and bidding on wonderful donated art and art-related goodies. Most importantly, in making this event a success, you, the City Council of Glenwood Springs, had given us a grant to assure of our ability to even hold the event at the Hotel Colorado. Without that grant, the event would not have happened, and the financial consequences would have been very different. The board in the last year worked on the health of the organization by completing a strategic planning, putting the organization in proper order with all governing authorities, including the state and federal governments, obtaining insurance, and even conducting a community needs survey. We shared the results of our survey with the city's Art and Culture Board. We sought and we received compensation for the losses of the Art Center from insurance and from restitution from our former director. What came of all of this was our ability in January of 2019 to retire or satisfy all the remaining debts of the Glenwood Springs Center for the Arts. It took almost every penny and it took almost every asset of the organization, but it was done. So we really have started 2019 with a clean slate. And we have you, the City Council of Glenwood Springs, to thank for our survival and our ability to continue to offer art opportunity to our community. And we do sincerely thank you. We greatly appreciate the trust and the confidence in giving us the financial backing that you did last year so that we were able to do what we did. Please be assured that this nonprofit will continue to create visibility, support, and opportunity for the arts in our community in any way that we are able to contribute into the future. We prepared a brief summary of some of the financial information from 2018 and an explanation. Okay, we already passed that out to you. And it also has an explanation of some of our planned activities for the community in 2019. We just want to thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Good work.
Yeah. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak to council about any item not on this evening's agenda? All right, seeing none, I will close it. At this point, we have our 27th Street Bridge update.
Do we have council comments? Or no?
Oh,
Is
did
that
I
after?
skip that? No, that's next.
Okay.
Ready for round two?
Oh, that's the
That's
pre-meeting.
morning.
I don't have my glasses on.
All right. Hey, everyone. I know you're not here for me, but I'm still flattered you're here. So, just a quick raise of hands. Who was present at the community open house we had here about a while ago at the community center?
Yeah, she has.
Good job, Jen. So just to recap this project, this 27th Street Bridge project is that project there sort of at the far side of town at the roundabout where the BRT station is. That's that bridge area. And this project has a couple of different areas that we are focusing on. It's essentially the new traffic bridge, which is being built to the south of the current traffic bridge, the new pedestrian bridge, which will be put to the north of the current bridge, and the new roundabout at the 27th Street Bridge and South Grand Avenue intersection.
So if you address us, it'll be on camera and everything.
Okay.
And yeah, because otherwise, if
Okay.
you're talking that way, the audience on the
Thank
TV
you.
won't hear it.
I will
Yeah.
redirect.
Yeah. Okay.
You're getting 20 people there, and on camera there will be thousands.
Well, we all know how much I like
Tonight.
attention, so let's focus that way then. So in these 2 months that we've gotten started with the project, we've gotten a lot of work done. Again, this is a critical piece of infrastructure for the city, and it's a really exciting project. And at the end of this, we're excited to have a product that will provide a really safe and important investment in our infrastructure. So this first 2 months, here on the screen there's a picture looking at the west side of our site area. Hidden underneath the bridge is Wall O, which is one of our soil nail walls that we are working on. This first month, in January, we mobilized the project and got that going off the ground. As part of that mobilization, we did a lot of utility work, which entailed exposing the utilities so we didn't poke into the utilities of the project, excavation of a lot of earth and other things in the area, and getting our soil nails going. So we have 2 right now. We've got the one on the east side of the project, which is Wall P, that was completed already, and we've got Wall O again on the west side, which we're anticipating to be complete at the end of this month. Quick refresh on what a soil nail is. It's a really long nail on this project. They're 15 feet long, and those go into the earth, and then they're covered with shotcrete. And both of these walls are both incredibly critical components of this project. They essentially form the new abutments of the bridges. So they're really important pieces to this overall project. We've actually installed around 100 already, so that's really exciting. Something we like to say about this project is that it's our 3D jigsaw puzzle. We have the current traffic bridge open, and at the same time we're building the substructure for the new traffic bridge, and then the superstructure off to the side. So we've got all of these different components shifting and moving into place, which is always really exciting for our really narrow site area. So that's sort of where we've been so far. Our next really big work activity component is micropile construction. And micropiles are, if it was a cannoli, you could think of the outside, this 10-inch diameter steel pipe is that flaky cannoli pastry. And then if there was like a cinnamon stick stuck in the middle. That's the steel rod that goes in it, and then the creamy, gooey stuff around it is a cementitious grout. And those also go super deep into the ground, about 60 feet into the ground. So they're really narrow, but they go down deep, and so those are deep foundation elements for the new bridges. Again, on this site, we are building this deep foundation work underneath the existing bridge, so that comes with unique challenges. You've got that low overhead on an already really narrow site, which makes for a really interesting construction activity. And these micropiles allow what is called ABC construction of the new foundations of the bridge, which is also known as accelerated bridge construction, which essentially allows us to keep this project moving on quicker than an alternate activity might be. And it also helps us to minimize our overall impact to our traveling public, which we all know is really important. What to expect as part of this new work activity. We are mobilizing late next week, so bringing crews on site to get started, and then on March 18th, we will actually start the testing of the micropiles, and then from then on, we're gonna have big drilling rigs getting down into the earth and getting these things going. So bigger operation, lots of heavy construction equipment and noise, and this impact will be ongoing for approximately the next 2 months. With this, we kindly ask, with this we've got traffic impacts, of course, which is always what people, the good stuff that people want to hear. We will have continue to have ongoing traffic holds and lane closures during off-peak hours, and the contractor is really committed to making every attempt to pushing work to during those off-peak hours. Again, really wanting to minimize our impact to the traveling public. So pushing that outside of when people are trying to get to school and work and coming home from school and work. We have a little bit of a unique situation on Wednesdays with early release from the school. So whenever possible, we're pushing that to off-peak hours. But again, due to the site constraints of this project, some of that critical path work and things that we can't move will occur during peak hours, which will be impactful. And these dates will be noticed via the cone zone and all the other sort of platforms that we are getting information out on. So it's a great way to plan your day, know what to expect as you're planning to travel through the area. With this, we're asking people to plan extra time. We've seen delays ranging from about 5 to 25 minutes, and again, they're intermittent in nature. So the best way to know what to expect is to be on that cone zone email. If you are like me and you sometimes use Midland as a not Grand Avenue route, use Colorado 82. It is set up to hold more traffic than Midland is, and the fewer people that we have trying to get through this roundabout area, the easier it is for our traffic control to manage those 3 different legs evenly. So use Colorado 82 if that can get you to your final destination instead of Midland Avenue. Whenever possible, walk, bike, carpool. I know we're in a bit of a full spring right now, but take advantage of walking and getting some fresh air. And if you've got kiddos, definitely encourage them to use the school bus. Again, the fewer people we have moving through the area, the easier it is for traffic control to get people where they want to go. Tune in. Again, Cone Zone email. We're on the city's Facebook and Twitter page. And with me at all times, I've got our project hotline. That voicemail is updated with whatever impacts you can expect. So call me if you want to hear my voice and what you can expect. And I always try and answer that right away. And if I don't, I try and get back to everyone as soon as I can, usually in a few hours. Don't block the roundabout, so that means don't pull into the intersection, and we'll have flaggers out there to help you, but it's easy to get on autopilot. So follow those flagger instructions and make sure we can keep that roundabout open, so if we have emergency services that need to get through the area, they can get to where they need to go. And with all construction, everything is very weather dependent and subject to change. We've had a really heavy winter, and I'm sure that we'll continue to have weather, so that always plays a big role in what sort of construction activities we've got going on. All right. Hours and noise. So again, beginning March 18th, that's when we're going to be having our micropile work beginning. Crews, as part of this, will access the site as early as sunup to begin daily work and operations for that work, so that we can, right at 7 a.m., hit that drilling operation and maximize our daylight hours to get that work done. And that work may continue as late as 9 p.m. Again, we're trying to minimize the days that we need to go that late. We know that noise is a big thing for people, but when we have to, it may go as late as 9 p.m. And we expect to see more work on Saturdays, especially with this warmer weather. We're really trying to get through this micropile construction. So expect some more work on Saturday, more frequency of Saturdays, and if necessary, some work may occur on Sundays. Again, all of this will be in our cone zone, or you can call that hotline and know what to expect. Big picture timeline and impacts. We are wrapping up wall O on the soil nail walls, and that is expected to be complete by the beginning of April, so end of this month, beginning of April. Micropile construction mobilizing at the end of this week. Testing starts on the 18th, and that's going to be ongoing through about mid-May. Then we'll move on to pedestrian bridge in the summer. After that is ready to go, we'll do the traffic bridge closure and the slide of the new bridge, which will be fun in the late summer. Roundabout, pier removal, landscaping, and wrap up in December. So that's what we are looking at for a timeline and some impacts. So again, questions, please reach out to me at any time. I actually have, for people here, you can come see me. I'm going to be here for a little bit, and I am happy to take your email and get you on that list. If you have your phone and you're a mobile phone user right now, put it out and put Brianna, your new best friend, in there as the contact, and the number is 970-618-5379. You can call or text that number, and I'll get back to you. So that is what we have for you today, and thank you very much, Council, for your time and letting me give a little update on our project.
Thanks, Brianna.
Thank you.
I actually have a really random question for you, and if you can't answer it, I apologize, and you don't need to even worry about it. But who is the micropile subcontractor? You know?
Micropile is Atlas.
Atlas, yeah.
Atlas.
We're just curious. They're out of Denver? Okay.
Yeah, so.
Thanks.
A big happy family out on the bridge. And
What an appropriate
Thank you very
name
much.
for
Thank
a
you.
piling company.
All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions for Brianna? All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Now we'll move on to council comments.
Oh, I had a comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to say we just did some interviews for applicants for our boards and commissions in the city, and thank you to everyone who applied and we were able to interview. We do still have some open positions, so we are still looking for members for the, I believe, the Parks and Recreation Commission. There's still one position that's open, and then the Arts and Culture Board, we're still looking for a couple of members for that. So if anyone out there in the community is interested, please apply. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Rick?
Yeah, I'd just like to say how remarkable it is that the Arts Council was able to retire about $60,000 in previous debt based on a very modest sort of grant that we gave them. And it wasn't easy. I think it was all uphill. But, you know, it's easy to walk away from a bad situation, and none of those people did. And so I think that just speaks tons to the resiliency and the talent that we have in Glenwood. I wanted to say that. And then I also have another comment. I've been getting a lot of feedback about our decision to institute a $50 parking fee downtown, and I was sort of swayed by the idea that we needed to do something in terms of parking in the downtown vicinity. I am wondering, though, comprehensively, since we're going to be talking about short-term rentals at some point, we're going to be talking about affordable housing at some point, whether some of that thinking might be better folded into a broader, more comprehensive discussion. And I know I voted for the fee, but I am personally thinking, you know, about reconsidering that whole, you know, immediate sort of notion in favor of something that would be more long-term and more developed, if you would, in terms of the whole situation downtown and, you know, throughout Glenwood. And so I don't know if anyone up here would have the appetite to do that. I understand it was a resolution. We probably can't do anything about it if we wanted to do anything about it tonight, but I'm just curious what our fellow councilors might think. Which isn't much, I guess.
Well, I think we all have thoughts about that, Rick.
Yep.
I certainly came out for that. It wasn't a parking fee. It was a permit application fee, which we charge even for backyard chickens. But it certainly hit the public as a very confusing issue. And I've had a lot of feedback since about why I'm now charging, or Deborah is now charging people to park downtown, and that wasn't at all the case. It was just, you know, the city charges quite a number of different permit processing fees for things that come up. But that being said, I'm very willing to take a step back from that and discuss that for another day, and I think we should. It's probably appropriate at this juncture to, we have quite a few parking changes coming into play anyway, and I'm willing to take that $50 permit processing fee off the table if that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
And I would certainly make that request to staff to bring that back to us another day. Are you blinking?
I
think, yeah, just in regard to this issue, I think that would, if it's the will of council to relitigate that, we can do that. You know, so if everyone wants to see a resolution where we rescind that $50 permit processing fee, then we can direct staff to bring a resolution back to us at the next meeting to do that. So
I would certainly support that.
I'd be in favor of that. The only comment I wanted to make is the other items that were on that list. I wouldn't be in support of I wouldn't be in support of readdressing those. I think those are fine. We're just talking about that $50 fee. If we could see something like that, it sounds like we're asking for that.
Okay. So is staff so directed? Yes. Okay. All right. Jim?
I'm good. My comments are similar to Jonathan's.
All right. Any other
one more thing.
Council comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, we had by my head count, we had 160 people turn out last night to Sopris Elementary for the airport conversation. Thank you for staff for putting that on, for advertising it. Thank you to Sopris Elementary for hosting it, and thank you to the community for showing up. It's a big piece of land. It serves an important use now, and having that feedback from the community and having their voice heard is really important. So it's 100 yards from my house, and so I really appreciate everybody having their voice heard on that.
Todd.
I'm just going to say something real quick. I really don't want to, but because I'm only going to be here 2 more full meetings and then I'm done. But I don't think we should be in a habit of a council comment asking for this type of change when we've gone through a process, we've gone through public meetings. Nobody was here to listen to that agenda item tonight. That's what got us into the VRBO situation that got me so upset last time. Is process matters up here. I mean, how we do processes and how we gain the trust of the people matters. And it just feels, am I against the fee? The $50 fees, whatever. I mean, if this room was full of businesses, they'd want it to be $200. It's just the process. So anyway, you guys work that out. You're going to be the next council sitting up here, not me, but that's just a precedence that I'm not comfortable with. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Todd. All right. If there's no further council comments, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening consists of the following. Item 13A is excavator purchase for the landfill. 13B is Tourism and Promotion Board Fund reserves request to the City Council. 13C is First Amendment of the Intergovernmental Agreement for Parking Lot and Common Area Maintenance with Garfield County. 13D is Resolution 2019-13, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Glendale Springs, Colorado, adopting the City of Glendale Springs Noxious Weed Management Plan. 13E is Ordinance Number 7, Series of 2019, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glendale Springs vacating a utility easement located at 3116 South Grand Avenue. This is a second reading. 13F is bot award. I'm guessing that's bid award for police vehicles. I'm not sure what a bot award would be. Maybe it's a...
It's right on
The
here.
electronic one says bid.
Yeah,
Okay.
the electronic one says bid.
Okay, I'm reading my paper one. And that is the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move.
A second?
A motion by Rick and a second by Shelley to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next item is, as I mentioned earlier, we're moving item 17 up.
17 or 16?
Well, on mine, I got 17.
17 on the paper.
17 on paper, 16 on
Okay, we're moving up the vacation rentals agenda item. It is my understanding, go ahead.
Let me jump right in there.
Jump right in there.
I'd like to make a quick motion to table that agenda item and with a couple of comments. One is we just have received on this agenda an enormous amount of information. A lot of thought and work went into that agenda item, both from staff's perspective and from P&Z, and I think that we would, that council need a little more time to discuss that, and we would request that we get a work session at our next council meeting. I think it's probably going to take at least an hour to do that, and I'm okay. You can bring lunch in for that. I also would like to express our appreciation to staff. They did an absolutely, I think, incredible job on bringing that together in what was a relatively short time frame for such an exercise. That being said, the moratorium's off, and so a little of the pressure's off of this council as well. It's a decision that hopefully we're going to make that will stick for a few years to come, and we're not going to readdress this every year or so. And so with that consideration, I think we would like a little more time, and that's my motion.
I'll second the motion.
A motion by Councilman Davis and a second by Councilman Ingraham to table the vacation rental discussion in consideration of resolutions and ordinances until the next.
The next meeting would be a work session, and we would hope to follow up that at the meeting following that with a possible agenda item for action.
Just to be clear,
we'll see how that goes.
That night we would have essentially what we have now in 2 weeks, but we would have the benefit of having a work session in the morning. Or are you saying?
No.
Work session, then 2 weeks, then first meeting in April potentially for action.
Yeah, that would be the April 4th meeting for action.
So a
potentially.
Okay.
March 21st or whatever the date would be,
March
work
21st.
session, and an April 4th.
Would we want to
Action
consider
item.
having action items at the same meeting after the work session, or? I mean,
You know,
we've done that
personally, I'd like to
typically.
buy us a little more time for contemplation before we just have some, you know, get kind of forced into an action item without all the time possible to consider those that action. So,
and also I think gives us the opportunity to share with the community maybe what some of the thinking was coming out of the work session, because I can envision some people maybe being concerned about what's being considered, and those items may not even be under consideration. So I think to signal to the community kind of what council's thinking, to have a couple weeks to get some input from the community on that before we make a decision, I think is a good idea.
yeah, and I also think that, and I'm hoping that through that work session that we have, that we may actually come up with some other ideas of our own and be able to direct staff to incorporate that into an action item, and they'll need time to do that.
That's a good point.
Okay.
And to get it back on the agenda.
Shelley?
Yeah, I'd just like to say on this issue, I'd reiterate Steve's thank you to staff for all the research that was done to date. I think we'll probably have more questions, especially if we're going to extend this timeline, and we might have additional research done. I'd also like to give a shout out to the Planning and Zoning Board, who held a special meeting on this because of the tight timeline and came up with, I think, some very solid recommendations that are based on the research and some of the survey data that came back on the issue. So I was hoping to move a couple of those items forward tonight, but I'm willing, these are policy issues that need to be well thought out for the city, and I'm willing to give them the time that is needed. So I'll support this.
Jonathan?
Everything's been said. Thank you.
Rick?
Yeah, I just think that interconnectivity of some of these decisions is going to be continually important to us. In my mind's eye at least, they're related. Affordable housing is related to a discussion on short-term rentals. Parking is related to a discussion on short-term rentals. And so I think this would give us a little time, a little breathing room, a chance to now that we have recommendations from P&Z, to be a little bit more rational about the kinds of resolutions that we want to pass, because we will be with this for a while, hopefully. And so people who are hoping for a decision tonight, I think you'll benefit from that period of time too. And for the report, I've been in the vineyards of government for quite a few years, and it's among the best and most thorough documents that I've seen a government produce. And so I don't know if you all have had a chance to wade through it. It only took me 2.5 cups of coffee, but I'd invite you tomorrow morning over breakfast, depending upon how long that meal takes you, to really have a look at that piece of work. It's really very fine.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilman Davis.
Do we want to let anyone who showed up tonight speak on the issue? I know there are some people, or I realize if we continue it, they're going to get another chance. But
council's call.
Do we want to at least see how many people might want to speak? I just feel bad if somebody took. Well, I don't know.
I feel like because we said, just my personal, I'm fine the other way, but I feel like because we kind of announced at the beginning of the meeting, and we did take comments of things not appearing on the agenda about that with Mr. Rovig, that maybe we've already allowed for that, and we're also going to have a work session to allow, well, not allow comment, but I'm sure somebody speaks up.
It's possible to allow public comment in a work session if we have sufficient time to do that. So I'm not opposed to that. But yeah,
I see a room full of comments. So
yeah.
So
People here, can they speak?
What's that?
If there are people here, can they speak? Or?
I guess, so we had my thinking is that so we have a more cohesive discussion at the next meeting. I'd rather not have some comments tonight that are kind of pre our work session, and then even those people might have a different opinion after our work session, because there's there's certain language in the ordinance and resolution today, and that might change for what's coming up in 4 weeks. So,
So a work session in 2 weeks, have we kind of dated that?
yeah, it'd be March, I don't have my calendar up.
March
It's the 21st.
March 21st will be the work session,
Do we
and
know
then
what time?
We don't.
I'm thinking I'd want to schedule it from like 4 to 6. You need more than an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And I think-
from
and then-
4 to 6, and then the council discussion and agenda action item on council meeting will be
April
on
4th.
April 4th.
So just
Hopefully.
to be clear, so if we have that work session from 4 to 6 on the 21st, we won't have an action item that night, but if anybody wanted to stick around at citizens appearing before council, they'd have a few minutes to speak on what they heard at the work session, so
Right.
that we're fully informed of what anybody wants to say about this issue for the next 2 weeks,
Right.
at which point in time we may or may not choose to take action on this item.
Right.
Right.
And if you take action, you will absolutely have public comment.
Then.
Because it'll be an ordinance and
So,
they,
okay.
you know, whatever that piece of legislation is, there has to be public comment.
Right.
Okay.
Real quick, Deborah, I guess, could you invite all city council candidates as well? Because this could be something that probably will continue over maybe to the second meeting of April, and for them to be able to attend that work session, particularly and specifically the April 4th session where we discuss it, would be, Todd, I've been very sensitive to you saying, we don't want to do this a year from now, or somebody else said that.
I said that.
You said that, but Todd said it before. We've done this 4 times, and I don't want to be sitting in your chair 6 years from now going, we've done this 4 times. So I think the way to do that is if we can get Ms. Stepp and Ms. Vanyon and Ms. whomever, Mr. Willman, anybody else who can be there, be part of it.
You're saying be in the room, not
Yes.
at the table.
No, not at the table, in the room.
Okay.
So, Councilman Davis, are you still looking for a second?
No,
I thought
we
I
have
had
we have a motion and a second. I'm just waiting to call the question.
It will be remarkably difficult for us to turn around any significant changes you want to make in the work session to the next meeting.
I don't
Because-
foresee any significant changes, and if there are significant changes, we quite understand that will be impossible to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
However, if there are finite changes, a little push here, a little shove there, then hopefully we can get that done. I think that the April 4th is a hope and a prayer, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. The motion is to table the vacation rental discussion to have a work session for tonight's meeting, and have a work session scheduled on March 21st at 4 p.m. and then with the intention of having an action item on the April 4th regular council meeting. All right, let's call the question. Are we voting on computer or on the buttons?
On the buttons.
Okay.
Buttons.
I don't know.
That's so much easier.
Okay.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cobb, yes. Motion passes unanimous.
All right. Next item, planning item 29-18, Hiddings, City of Glenwood Springs Enclave Annexation, Comprehensive Plan, Future Land Use Map Amendment, and Rezoning.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Just a couple of last-minute items to pass out to you. I do apologize for that. We've got some motions for you that include both the action items as well as the ordinances. So you should be able to accomplish those all together if you end up going that direction, as well as a revised resolution that addresses one minor change that I'll let you know about. And the last item is actually a request from the applicant, or well, the co-applicant. The city is also an applicant to this proposal, but a request for a reduction or a removal of the associated fees with the applications. And again, this is the Iddings and City of Glenwood Springs Annexation Comprehensive Plan Use Map Amendment and Rezonings. The current proposal, there are a lot of details to this application. These are really simple processes, but kind of technical in nature. Reminds me of the Gould annexation and disconnection with the airport property that we did a year before, just because there are a lot of moving parts. But it involves the Idding parcel as well as a portion of the Glenwood Springs Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses parcel. The Iddings parcel is approximately 37,500 square feet, and the small piece of the Jehovah's Witness property is 2,000 square feet. And if we look at the top map here, this property that does not have a red highlight is the entire property of the Jehovah's Witness Church. The current property that is owned by Mark Iddings is shown here in red. The properties that we are looking at specifically for the annexation are what do you see here in kind of the red rectangle. And that is what you may hear me refer to as the former Iddings property. So, current Iddings property is the red here. The former is the red rectangle. And here is the 2,000 square foot portion of the Jehovah's Witness Church's property that is part of the annexation. The comp plan future land use map amendment is only associated with the current Iddings property, again in red, or on this portion of the map shown with the heavy dashed line. The rezonings associated with this are two different designations that are proposed. For the small 2,000 square foot piece of the Jehovah's Witness properties, or parcels property, we are requesting a rural residential zoning, which would be consistent with the remainder of the lot that is currently in the city and currently zoned rural residential. And then for the entirety of the Iddings property, we're requesting residential high density. So just a couple of pictures of the lot. If you're looking from Airport Road, this would be the Iddings property towards the southwest, and then this would be the JW property looking west. And so if you can get an idea of where that small 2,000 square foot area is, it's kind of right in here, obviously, laid down flat on the ground there. Here's a copy of the current zoning map that shows the rural residential zoning of the Jehovah's Witnesses property. It does not show anything for the Iddings property, which is actually a map error that it shows that it's outside of the city currently, because technically really only this portion that was in the red rectangle previously is outside of the city currently. But there's a lot of mixed multifamily development around here. This would be Cardiff Glen across the street, and then this would be the PUD of Silver Sage, also Cardiff Mesa, that was approved not too long back here to the south. So enclave annexations are outlined in Colorado Revised Statute 31-12-1061, and they're slightly different than the traditional kind of process for a petition for annexation that we go to, where an owner comes to the city and requests to be annexed into the city, generally because they would desire to have our services, usually water and sewer. An enclave annexation can occur of any property that is fully surrounded by the municipal limits for a period of 3 years or more, which is the case with this property. It doesn't require the general petition process resolution that initializes the annexation, substantial compliance hearing, or annexation impact report. It does require proper publishing, as well as notice to the Board of County Commissioners, County Attorney, and school and other special districts. The comp plan future land use map amendment that's proposed is from low density residential and hillside preservation for the Iddings property only, and that designation, the residential one generally is for single family detached homes, and the hillside preservation is for slopes that are greater than or equal to 20%. They're proposing to revise that to multifamily residential, which accommodates multifamily structures of 3 units or greater. The criteria for approval of an amendment are outlined in Chapter 1, page 15 of the comprehensive plan. One being subsequent events have invalidated the original premise. The character and condition of the area has changed. Facilities in that area are adequate. An inadequate supply of suitably designated land is available, and or the community or area will derive benefits from the change. The rezoning that's requested, and I'm just going to focus on the residential high density that's proposed for the current Iddings property, is intended to accommodate housing types ranging from single family detached on small lots to multifamily dwellings, and to be a transition between established neighborhoods and more intense commercial and other non-residential uses, which are pretty limited in nature. I think the major change that you would see in this zone district would be that administrative and professional offices are allowed there. Section 706040A3F3 outlines the rezoning approval, and in this case really is an initial zoning of these areas that are coming into the city, which is required with any annexation. But A being, and all these being either consistency with the city's comprehensive plan, with the proposed purpose statement of that zone district, substantial changes in the neighborhood permitted, or the change is not expected to create significantly adverse impacts. And these all seem to be, the application seems to be consistent with these. In regards to comments for this application, we have not received any from adjacent property owners nor from city staff. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of action items 2, 3, and 4, which don't necessarily match up with the action items in your staff packet, because they were not required to take action on the annexation, again, because it only requires, in this case, an approval of an ordinance by City Council. They did request a change to a recommended condition that staff had in terms of obtaining an easement from the applicant for a portion of Airport Road that we see future improvements to that segment and right-of-way that is not currently owned by the city. Staff's, the resolution that we passed to you tonight that's associated with the map amendment, the land use map amendment, actually reverts that back to the original easement that staff recommended, as the Planning and Zoning Commission wanted a fee simple right-of-way, which would have been actual transfer of the property. We've converted that back to an easement. Staff really doesn't have any opinions about that specific request. However, the City Attorney's Office did recommend that we do that, just so there's no conflicts with any annexation or rezoning conditions. Section 706030G allows you to approve with conditions, deny, or continue the hearing. Staff recommends that you approve action item 1, you approve with conditions action item 2, and that you approve action items 3 and 4. And again, we provided you with some suggestive motions, and those motions do include verbiage for the action items as well as the ordinances that are associated with all of these. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Jim Mason is also here. He's representative of the owner, Mr. Iddings, and he probably would like to share some things with you as well.
If I may, really quick too, just on that right-of-way versus easement. This is unusual. Normally in an annexation, I suggest to you that you can ask for anything you would like, because it's a voluntary event on the applicant's part. They're asking for something to come into the city. In this instance, it's an enclave. We have the authority to force them to annex, and we are operating underneath that statute for an enclave annexation. The limitation in that, though, is that you can't then also say, well, we're going to annex you involuntarily, and we're going to impose a whole bunch of conditions that you don't necessarily agree to, which is the other reason to convert this. Look at it as an easement, which from a staff perspective is sufficient for now. And I think that in the larger picture of how we're improving Airport Road and in that section of town, there are a couple of other options for this parcel that we're discussing with Mr. Iddings through his attorney, Chad Lee, who is also here to resolve this right-of-way versus easement versus ownership of the parcel issue. So I'd suggest that that's why we've drafted a new resolution for you on the comp plan amendment for tonight. I'm more comfortable, and I think the applicant wouldn't consent to the condition nor the annexation, and we wind up in a challenge if we go down the right-of-way path at this time.
And I did want to make one more point, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. This all kind of stems from a large, much larger, approximately 160-acre annexation that occurred in 1983 by the Glenwood Limited Company at the time. We determined through the research of this application that they inadvertently annexed this parcel that was owned by Mr. Innings, and he was not a party to that annexation. And so that's kind of the reason why the city became involved in this application, because one, we would like to annex this enclave just to make it kind of a clean municipal boundary at the southern end of the city. But in order for this to truly be an enclave, the city had to be a party to annex that piece of the Jehovah's Witness church that's there, because otherwise we couldn't annex that, or the Innings could not annex that without the consent of the property owner. However, the city can annex that as well as zone it. And I have had multiple discussions with church representatives, and they don't have any objections at this time that I've been made aware of. So just wanted to make sure that you understand that.
Thanks, Trent. The applicant's preference for the language on the conditions, is that in our current, this document you provided
Yes.
us? Okay.
So this language is, if council so chooses, is correct.
Correct.
To move towards approvals on this if we...
As well as the language in the suggested motions that I provided. It
Right.
specifically accepts that.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I have the first question?
You can have both questions. You can clear me out.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. There's two questions.
Well,
No,
Jonathan
I-
pushed
oh.
the button too. Go ahead.
The only question I have, Trent, is we also received a copy of this letter. Do you have any comments on that? Is that really something that council needs to take up tonight, or is that something that staff can take up?
It is something that has to be approved by city council. Yeah, my only comment would be is that, again, the city kind of became a part of this application, and I think it's good for us to clean up this as well. So I don't think that we have any objections, certainly, to any type of a fee waiver or adjustment.
Staff doesn't necessarily.
Correct.
Okay.
Are these funds, it sounds like these are funds he's already expended that he would like a refund of. Is that the
Correct.
case? Okay, so it's less of a fee waiver than it is a refund of a fee.
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
And it looks like he's just requesting the 3,000, not the 750 also? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, or what council feels is appropriate, I think
Okay.
is what.
So is that also in need of a motion and second?
Yes.
To do that?
So we have 4 actions. to
So
take.
we've got 4 actions. Would you prefer that one comes ahead of the other actions, Counselor?
I would just go in the order that they're listed and then take the fee waiver
At
refund
the end?
At the end.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any further council questions for Trent or? Okay. Mr. Mason?
Good evening. My name is James Mason. I live at 521 Sunny Acres Road here in Glenwood Springs. I'm representing Mr. Iddings, who unfortunately due to illness cannot be here himself. So I've been acting as his power of attorney for about the last 8 months. Also, as Trent mentioned, Chad Lee is here as well. So, Honorable Mayor and Council, I would just like to give a real brief history of this property. It's, as you can tell, it's been kind of a long, strange trip. And so, bottom line is, Mark had purchased this property back in about 1985, and shortly thereafter it was re-annexed into commercial general under Garfield County. Around 2001, there was an adverse possession claim by Mr. Iddings against the Jehovah's Witness Church, which resulted in him prevailing in that. The scenario there was that they tore down his building that was on this property without his permission, and so he had to seek legal counsel, and that resulted in a boundary line adjustment in which he gave up some property, but he also received some property. The property that he received was in the city limits, and the property he gave up is that part of that little blue patch right up there. So he now had a piece of property, part in the city and part in the county. At numerous times he attempted to come to the city for annexation, and unfortunately there was a lot of moratoriums over the years. There was water issues out there. There was various other things that came up, and so the process just never got completed. And I think, as a matter of fact, that last moratorium ended about in 2018, if I have my numbers right there. Again, while working with the city on this annexation, it was discovered that the property was included, and I believe it was 1988. I think it was Ordinance 88 of 1988, not 1983, that it was included in the Glenwood Limited annexation, and nobody recognized that until we were doing the survey work for this annexation. There was also discovered when we were going through this process, the little part of the Jehovah's Witness property was also not included at the time they were annexed, and so we were directed by staff that we needed to go through this enclave annexation process. Obviously, due to the history with the Jehovah's Witness Church, Mark didn't feel that it was his responsibility to take on their process, and it was also of a benefit to the city to take that process on. So the city / we have been going through this process together. The city has always wanted over the years for Mark to grant an easement across the front of this property out there on Airport Road. And he was through the years and is still willing to do so. And we've already touched on that, but for clarification to the staff report, Mr. Iddings is not wanting to transfer the real estate or dedicate the property, but is certainly agreeable to granting an easement. We have discussed that with staff, and I believe everybody is comfortable with that easement scenario. And I think you folks have been briefed on that as well. Finally, the letter that you received this evening, I know that kind of came short notice, but he is requesting that a refund of his annexation fees. Basically, due to the unusual circumstances around this situation, he has paid for all the survey work, paid for all the mailings, paid for neighborhood meetings, all of the associated things that go along, as well as the fees for the annexation. And he's just simply requesting that you would maybe consider refunding those fees, since we're partners in this deal. So, in closing, I want to thank you for considering this evening, and I certainly want to thank the staff. They've been very helpful through this process. It has not been an easy scenario to try to figure out which way we want it to go, but Trent and his crew and everybody is engineering. Everybody's just done a great job, so we appreciate that. And I hope that you will favorably approve this annexation and subsequent documents this evening.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? No? All right. At this time, I would like to open it up to any public comment. If anyone in the public would like to make a comment on this item, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, I will close it to public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and or motion. Jonathan.
I move to approve the annexation of an enclave property in Ordinance 10, Series of 2019, with the recommended findings listed on page 136 of the March 7th, 2019 City Council packet.
Second.
I have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Steve to approve the annexation of an enclave property in Ordinance number 10, Series of 2019, with recommended findings listed on page 136 of the March 7th, 2019 City Council packet. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cope, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, Jonathan?
I move to affirm the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission and approve the comprehensive plan future land use map amendment and resolution number 15 series of 2019 with the recommended findings and conditions listed on page 136 of the March 7th, 2019 City Council packet. However, revising the condition for the transfer of right-of-way instead to a public access / utility / maintenance easement.
Second.
We have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Steve to affirm the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and approve the comprehensive planned future land use map amendment and resolution number 15 series of 2019 with recommended findings and conditions listed on page 136 of the March 7th, 2019 City Council packet. However, revising the condition for the transfer of right-of-way instead to a public access utility maintenance easement. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cope, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Jonathan.
I moved. Sorry, I was holding it together.
There you go.
I move to affirm the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and approve the rezoning and ordinance number 11 series of 2019 with the recommended findings listed on page 137 of the March 7th, 2019 City Council packet.
Second.
We have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Steve to affirm the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and approve the rezonings and ordinance number 11 series of 2019 with the recommended findings listed on page 137 of the March 7th, 2019 City Council packet. Any further discussion? Let's call the motion. Or the question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cope, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Jonathan.
I move to reimburse the applicant, Mark Eidings, $3,000 for expenses incurred.
Second.
We have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Steve to reimburse the applicant in the amount of $3,000 for expenses incurred in this application process. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cope, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Now we're moving along.
How we do it.
We are moving along.
All right, next
Thank you.
item, 7th Street. Yep, thank you.
Trent.
7th Street change order number 1.
Can I move the table?
Steve.
Good evening, Council. I'm here to present our first change order for the 7th Street project. We have discussed this in the past. This was the addition of that piece of beautification work, essentially from the elevator tower, the Grand Avenue Bridge itself, all the way back to Colorado. When we last discussed this, the design engineer had given us an estimate, and the council seemed like they were in support of that piece of work. Essentially, we would be adding new pavers and concrete to, all the way out to our future restroom location at Colorado. In the original scope of work, we were just trying to replace and repair some of the old concrete there. This would actually change the streetscape to be exactly what's on the other side of on 7th, beyond the Grand Avenue Bridge. So this is our original contract. When we began to evaluate the addition of the change order work, just to refresh your memory, the original work contains a section of sewer, a sanitary sewer that runs from the elevator tower all the way to Colorado Avenue. And it also contains the 2 beautification areas, which are phase 1 and phase 2. And essentially those are, in the areas in red and green that you see here. The impetus for the change order work was realizing that that sanitary sewer work would actually cause us to be taking out curb there in front of the grind and in front of Slope and Hatch, and wanting to extend those treatments. So this is the original contract. Here, with the original scope of work, we had talked about trying to accelerate the work so that we would have less impact on the businesses. And so at the time of the original approval for the contract, the council voted to approve an accelerated schedule, which was included traffic control and other elements in the amount of $134,400. So when we evaluated the change order work, we realized that there was a potential conflict with the change order work and with the original scope, in that the new sidewalk, the beautification elements, on that side of the block would actually cause some impact to trying to keep a vehicular lane open, as we had discussed in the original proposal. So we have been working with Gould and trying to come up with different solutions. This was our original contract and what we had agreed to on January 3rd. This is an option which preserves the vehicular access, as we had discussed with the business owners and their preferred alternative of trying to keep a vehicle, some sort of a vehicular path through there. Again, as you can see, we're trying to dodge that area in yellow, which is, essentially a work zone in front of the beautification elements there. It will work. It's not ideal. It's definitely, in terms of staff and Gould's preferences, our second preference, but it does allow us to meet that goal of opening a lane of vehicular traffic through there on July 2nd. This is the preferred alternative at this point. Unfortunately, you can see that there's not a vehicular path through here. It is an acceleration of the pedestrian opening. What this would allow is Gould to free up that area on the far adjacent to Amtrak, where we had talked about doing landscaping and fountains and other things faster. If we went back to this other scenario, you can see that that area that we're planning landscaping and tables and that kind of thing is still covered in red, and it's scheduled for an August completion. And we wouldn't be able to release this area to a future contract for additional landscaping and tables and that kind of thing. It would just take, extend our impact in that area for a little longer. So again, this is not a vehicular acceleration. It is a pedestrian acceleration, and would not meet that goal of having vehicular access through here, but would, the idea is to be able to remove fencing and that kind of thing, and let the pedestrians have more access, essentially from east to west. This is the final option to consider. This would be a full vehicular acceleration. For an additional $25,000, Gould would be willing to extend their traffic control and all of those things and their crew time to try and accelerate the beautification element in front of Slope and Hatch and the grind, and allow that vehicular access through. These are the costs that we're currently considering. The budget, you can see, is a little over $4 million. The base bid that we approved on January 3rd, at least the phases 2 and 3 that are coming out of the A&I fund, are shown there, the $1.6 million. That accelerated schedule that we approved on January 3rd is shown there as well. We recently had to purchase bollards for the project. Those are shown there. These last 3 items are just estimates of what the landscaping and furniture and water features could be. I'm not certain how accurate those estimates are, but right now you can see that we're kind of deducting those existing costs and anticipated costs and coming up with a remaining budget in the A&I fund. The change order 1 cost that has been proposed is $153,884.85. So we would be asking for your approval for change order 1 today. The change order 1 acceleration, again, is that allowing that vehicular access through and pushing all the traffic to the north side would be an additional $25,000. At this point, from a staff standpoint, I would recommend that we just approve the change order 1 and consider either the vehicular path through, that would be option 2, or option 3, the pedestrian acceleration. Do you have any questions? Kate Weisner with Gould Construction is here to answer any technical questions.
Any questions for Terry or Kate?
I did have a question on just if you can go back to the change order 1 and just
the original scope, or
right.
Okay, I'm going to go back here.
So if we approve change order 1, which
option? When we originally, there was a lot of confusion around this. On January 3rd, when we came to you to approve the project,
right.
We talked about the sewer phase, and we called it at the time phase 2 beautification and phase 3 beautification. And both of those were just the surface improvements, essentially, from Grand Avenue back to the east towards Cooper.
Right.
And at that time, we discussed just an estimate that Derek had given us for the change order work.
Like
and that change order work
10 or something, I think.
Yeah, it was roughly 110.
Okay.
So it included just the surface treatment for the change order. And at that time, the council thought, that's a good idea. Let's get some real pricing. So this is the discussion of the real pricing and the conflict, I guess, that we would have with the accelerated schedule that we've already awarded, as well as the change order work.
Okay. So if we just approve option 1 tonight to continue this work all the way down to Colorado and 7th, it could potentially conflict with that accelerated schedule.
We've already approved option
chance
1. Our decisions are options 2, 3, or 4. If we want to go with the change order at all. If we're doing option 1 is the current contract.
It is. That's correct. What we should consider is option B. So accepting just the change order work, so the $153,884 without an accelerated schedule. So that this is an option to just do the $153,000, and then option A, and we labeled it option A because it's the preferred option for staff and Gould Construction. Also, is just the change order work. The last option, this labeled 4, is the full acceleration. So $134,000 plus another $25,000 to accelerate the change order work as well. So you can see, the cost goes up another $25,000 to $178,000, and that only allows that vehicular lane and switches it from the south side, which was the original plan, to the north side.
To the north side. But so, what do you mean, Mike? We already gave direction to go ahead and continue this work all the way down.
This is, if you see at the bottom, that's already approved.
Right, but does that include the $110,000?
No, the work in the blue area on the initial contract includes just basically replacing the existing pavers in that stretch. It's not the new improved look like we're doing everywhere else. It's just the existing surface. What's that?
It does widen just a little bit. The current contract shows a widening that essentially goes to that little pocket park that's adjacent to Slope and Hatch there. Right. It's not very well shown on here, but that's actually the current scope of work.
That's the green area is the widened area, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So in the blue area itself, it is just simply replacing the existing pavers. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
So that's, if we don't approve anything tonight, this is what we're getting, is what's on this slide. Our question before us tonight is, do we want to approve options 2, 3, or 4, which would do that, what was estimated previously at 110,000 is now estimated at 154,000 roughly, right. To basically extend the same finish, the same bricks and whatever finishes are going to be on the sidewalk everywhere else, all the way down to the corner of Colorado where our new restroom is going to go.
Right.
So
you can go. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
Okay. But it's still showing that red portion is still showing the narrow sidewalk. Are we not getting the widened?
We would get the widened. The widened is in the current scope. It's that transition there is hard to see. But the sidewalk widening to the pocket park adjacent to Slope and Hatch is included in all of these scenarios.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
And then these improvements, once improved, would actually look just like the sidewalk along in front of Smoke and the Pullman and along that area.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
And then I certainly have comments, but we're in the question session, so.
Kate, is there anything you'd like to add to any of this? You're not required to, but if you want to,
I think Terry described it pretty well. It's the two options that we have that don't require additional funding for additional overtime work and some additional risk on schedule for this new surface area, first of all, and also level of effort to put more concrete underlayment down, more clay pavers, without adding money to accelerate that. The two options, like Terry said, are either, we have in this option red areas, the pedestrian areas that wouldn't be able to be finished by July 2nd. We would be able to open up a lane of traffic. It would have to snake, so it's not ideal. But we could finish the area in green, which was originally part of the accelerated contract work. And then option A, which would be, we feel preferable in a lot of ways, would just be to work, make sure all the pedestrian areas that are relevant to businesses are open by July 2nd. And then gradually, as we work our way from the east to the west, which is our most efficient way of working for the overall project, so that we can get done with the whole thing as soon as we possibly can. We would be opening up fencing as we move east to west, try to open up more and more area as we go, rather than have the whole north side still blocked off after July 2nd. Obviously, some portions of the north side would still have to be blocked off. It's a good amount of area for masonry, but as we move our way west, we would be able to open up more and more and more area.
And certainly the most efficient, I suppose, from a construction standpoint, would be to keep the street closed and just make haste over your project.
It would. In general, we'd like to work east to west. Obviously, with the accelerated schedule, the way it's currently contracted, we have to prioritize our resources from the north side of the road south to make sure that we get done in time. But doing it this way with this, this pedestrian access continuing to be open, we can work in our natural progression with our equipment moving east to west, which keeps our flow better and is more efficient overall for the project.
And without conflicting traffic.
Correct.
In your project zone.
Correct.
Shelley, did you have another question?
I did. So just for clarification, though, so when we originally awarded this contract, we did include the accelerated schedule, which meant the street would be open, at least one lane, for July 2nd. So am I understanding correctly that this option A would not include that at all?
Option A would not open a lane for vehicles. It does take the surface area that was part of the original acceleration and just modifies the footprint that covers. So rather than prioritizing getting a lane open for vehicles, we're prioritizing finishing up that amount of surface area of the overall project, but preferencing pedestrian access around the elevator and stairway. The new sewer change order work in front of Slope and Hatch, Bill Bondsman and the Grind, and then also, apart from those two areas that aren't part of the other option, we would also be opening up from west to east as we progress.
Okay. I guess I was under the
east to west, I'm sorry.
Consideration, though, when we originally discussed it, every effort was going to be made to have that south side sidewalk open, and then to have pedestrian, you know, it might be moving, but to have pedestrian access for crossing close to the elevator and everything. So I guess it sounds like if we approved option A, we've almost paid for that accelerated schedule to get the lane open, but we're not getting that now. So I'm wondering, do we get those funds back? Or I'm wondering how that works.
I'll speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
We had that same concern when we first started considering this, and I was very worried about the fact that the change order work essentially conflicts with the acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of discussions, and we have figured out a way that we can do, you know, the change order work plus the acceleration and still get a vehicular lane through. You can see it here. It's not the opening of the entire south side of the road, but it does, you know, snake, as Kate said, that vehicular track to the north side, so that if that were the council's preference, we could still get vehicles through there and meet the condition of, you know, the $134,000 paying for a vehicular lane of traffic through the work, and that would happen on July 2nd.
Okay. I guess do you have a recommendation on, is there some reason there's a trade-off between option A and B, and what is your?
So my opinion, you know, I was concerned about the political ramifications because, you know, I think Mr. Carver, who's here to speak to it tonight, you know, on behalf of the businesses, really wanted that accelerated schedule and really wanted it for a vehicular lane of traffic to be past the businesses.
Right.
So, you know, when we first approached that, I thought this is a really big issue. This is a problem. You know, we have figured out a way to make that happen with a change order work. I think this is actually the preferred alternative for a couple of reasons. First, I think that the vehicular, adding that sweep, that turn in the middle, will allow vehicles through, but it will, I guess, extend the amount of time that we're in this area. This schedule, where we keep the vehicles out of this area and try to accelerate the pedestrian movements through here, I think will make this project go faster overall. The other thing that it allows is, you can see on the adjacent to Cooper there, that green area that would open July 2nd. That is at least part of our landscaped area that, you know, we would like to let a contract for soon, and would allow a landscape contractor or faster access to that area to go ahead and finish the landscaping. You can see, you know, with this option that includes the vehicular traffic through the area, that landscape area remains in red and has an August completion, which means that, you know, it's harder for Gould to release that to another contractor until they finish the paver, you know, the masonry work through there.
Okay. Right.
And are you through?
I think so. I'll express concerns later, but yeah, that gives me a good understanding. So thanks, Terry.
And I guess I'll phrase this as a question, since we're in that question session.
Okay.
But the $134,000 that we have contracted for and obligated to create an accelerated construction schedule doesn't necessarily just discuss opening a lane of traffic. It's the acceleration of the entire project, as I understand it. So that money is being spent for overtime, more masons on the job, moving the job along to a quicker completion. Would that be your understanding?
Yes.
Whether we get a lane of traffic open or not in the process, and in fact, maybe you're spending now more dollars instead of managing traffic. You're able to spend those dollars on masonry work and laborers to try to move this project through.
Yeah.
But Wasn't a lot of that acceleration to get a lane open by July 2nd?
Well, there was a discussion of that, yeah, but I know there was also more, at the time we had a discussion, and I think Mark was up talking about the fact that it was to hire more subcontractors and more masons and try to, continuing to move that project along. Part of that discussion certainly was the street, and I think Mr. Carver will have something to say about that as well, but I just don't think that we've now, if that money's not being spent wisely, I think it's just being allocated for other construction instead of streets and traffic control. We're able to actually move the masonry along quicker.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, if that's correct.
That's correct.
All right. Let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. Is there anyone in the public? Mr. Carver.
So thanks for inviting me, Steve Carver with Hotel Denver and the Downtown Development Authority, and I had an opportunity to look at this stuff in the packet today and visit a little bit to try to understand it, and I think I was probably the most vocal about wanting the one lane of traffic open in July, and I think the rest of the business people were less concerned about that than making sure that we had access for the pedestrians.
That's true.
And so, and I buy into that. I think that's fine. It doesn't really impact our property as much as it does the rest of downtown, and so I'm in support of that. And I think what you've come up here with in terms of this, I get confused between 3A and 2B, but the 3A alternative with no vehicular path, but with more accelerated pedestrian access and moving the east to the west makes sense to me. And I think if I look at it, maybe being an accounting mind, if I had done it, I would have maybe looked at the areas that were getting completed. It looks to me like you're talking about the same surface area that's getting completed. More of it's getting completed up on the the northeast corner, that green one under option 3, than what is now it's in the middle of the street that's getting completed. Does that make sense, Terry?
Yeah, no, that is true. I'm going to switch over here just so you can see that graphic.
Yeah, so that far right green section, all that green is more than the yellow that you were giving up for the street section. And you've got the green at the elevator passage, so that I think it's a better experience for the pedestrians. And it looks to me like it's going to happen faster. I'm optimistic that Kate and the Gould team are then going to be able to deliver more of that green to us early on, maybe in late July. We still have a big push here in tourism season, the latter part of July and early August. So if we could get the more of that that's moving east to west in the green, in my perfect world, it's green all the way to the elevator towers by about July 21st or something, because that's when prime season is here. So I'm fully in support of that. I think it's a good idea. I don't know why our new bathroom's not on the corner of Colorado and 7th, though, because that's being built as we're talking. I saw a picture of the concrete for the prefab that's being done to get installed there. So next time, let's do that. That's another thing that happens by getting this done now, is we have that whole beautiful access to our new bathroom whenever it's done. So that's what I have to say about it. I think good work.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for coming.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Wait a minute.
Got to be quick around here, sorry.
I'll be quick. My name is Gerald.
Come on up to the microphone and give us your name and address, please.
My name is Gerald Alp. I live in West Glenwood on Millray Road. I have a question. How is emergency equipment going to get into that section of road that's all nice and green?
The green just represents phasing. It's not actually grass or anything. That's just a phase boundary. That green section there that covers the street will still be a street. So when we're done.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah. Any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council for discussion and or a motion. Mr. Davis.
Well, I guess my only comments are, as a downtown business owner, I'm just interested in getting this project done. And I know Gould and Son Construction is anxious to get out of this project as well. The quicker the better. As far as I'm concerned, if it'll help you move through the project quicker, don't ever open a lane of traffic through there. It's a one lane anyway. There's no parking anywhere, and it really serves little purpose. A greater purpose would be to accelerate that project as quickly as possible, get it done and get out of the way. We've got tourists in town and we've got business to do. So I would greatly appreciate anything you can do there to keep it moving, and I'm excited that it seems all the conversation and drawings that I've seen are keeping pedestrian access to the elevator tower and to the stairs up to the Ped Bridge across to the restaurants, and we did not see that during the Grand Avenue Bridge project, and that's what hurt tremendously so many businesses down there. So as long as we keep that pedestrian access open, I think pedestrian access is certainly the #1 goal and need down there, and not so much just that I have the ability to drive my car through there.
Do I hear any kind of motion there?
Did you make a motion out of any of that yet?
So maybe
so move.
There needs to be one of those options you're moving toward.
That's a lot of time. I don't even know how to. These options have jumped around so much.
I think it's option A that we want to.
Option, or
maybe Jim, are you prepared down there?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I defer to.
I'd make a motion for option A.
For option A.
Approve option A.
And I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Davis, a second by Councilman Ingraham to approve option A for the 7th Street accelerated schedule with sewer.
And you're sure that's the preferred option that we were talking about?
Yes.
Don't tell me later I made the wrong.
I know it's very confusing, but it's.
We'll tell you that when things go wrong.
It was.
Jim?
It was confusing.
Did you want to make any more comments?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree with what Steve said. I attended all those meetings and heard the discussion of traffic and pedestrian, and it was very clear to me that what was important was, in fact, the pedestrian traffic and the completion of the project on as timely a basis as possible. That's why I'm in support of option A. It achieves those things. On top of that, I didn't really like kind of that dog leg thing with the traffic going through and the other option. So this to me was clearly the best option. And the only other comment I have is a side option, but sort of echoes Mr. Carver's thing, that I would love to see in future drawings that where that corner is, it shows the bathroom there. And you may say, well, why are we talking about that now? But it surprises me how many people will still comment to us to say, we need bathrooms downtown, we need bathrooms downtown. So I think everything we put out into the public ought to show that bathroom that we've approved.
The big red letters, bathroom.
Yeah.
And that's my only comments. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Did you have a big blue B?
Instead of the brown P, we can have a new symbol.
I think it needs to be.
It's kind of a parking thing.
I think it needs to be one of those very traditional-looking signs. Never mind. Shelley?
I'll just say, I realize we're moving this project forward, but I've kind of reached my limit of cost on this project, so I'm not going to support this tonight. And I also feel like we paid for acceleration and to get a lane open. Now we're not getting that, and I understand the options and everything, but I just can't support it. So just letting you know why.
All right, let's call the motion.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Carried, no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on, Resolution 2019-16, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, approving the 2019 street plan and alley reconstruction plan.
Good evening, Council. Bring this up real quick. I know that there is a list within your packet, but I think the map is a little bit more telling for that list. Obviously, the resolution is for streets and alleyways. I wanted to make that clear if you read through the resolution that the alleyways are not actually within this visual nor on the list. We already have a budget within the existing street tax to accommodate for those, but we have written it into the resolution that that street tax could be used for the alleyways if we deem we could do more of them faster. They're a little bit of a complicated situation piece by piece, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear with everybody. The list itself starts in 2018 and goes all the way through 2030, I'm sorry. But the list continues on and on and on ever after that. So we have every street on that list starting in 2018. Some were chip and sealed, or some were crack sealed. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this list never ends. It starts back over in 2031 with some of those streets that are in 2018 right now that may need mill and overlays at that point and other things. So I'm mainly here to, I guess, answer questions from the council.
Matt, am I correct? Sorry to push my button.
Oh, go ahead.
Am I correct in that the 2018, we've seen this drawing for a while now. Was this contemplated for the November ballot? And because there's projects in 2019 that probably aren't getting done in 2019, is that correct?
So the list will be ever evolving. There are projects in 2019 with some of the conditions on some of the streets we're all well aware of. We are going to have to spend some money that was anticipated in 2019 on those streets to keep them functioning through the winter of 2019 and 2020 prior to larger construction projects kicking off in 2020 to repair major street sections. Obviously, I'm talking about South Midland. You know, it was anticipated that project was going to start this year, so we didn't do a whole lot of maintenance on South Midland last year. We are not going to make that mistake again this year. There will be some money going out the door that will be, in essence, torn up within about 365 days of it going out the door. But it's a good expenditure. It will save people, save cars. It will save our crews a huge amount of time. Basically, we have 5 or 6 people working on that stretch of road every day. So we are not maintaining other areas of town that we need to be. So yes, the 2019 schedule that I already have within here actually is changing because of a water line issue we have, because of South Midland and a few other things. And that will happen in 2020. And that will probably happen in 2021. We are going to try to stick to this list as much as humanly possible, but to accommodate for changes in utility needs, drainage needs that pop up, such as this winter has shown us, we will be adjusting the list slightly here and there.
I just wanted to follow up, Jonathan, too. In the ordinance adopting that would, if the tax that's on the ballot passed, the implementation ordinance references the adoption of this plan. Hence, we wanted to make sure that we got this plan adopted to identify that also contained language repealing that tax and the completion of the initial phase when every road gets touched in this plan. And I think what you're assuming funding this, we'd be through this list the first time in
theory 2030.
2030. So that was the other reason for why it's in the form it is and in front of you guys.
Gotcha, but for and maybe this is just my misunderstanding or lack of ability to understand, but I'm looking at the 20 roadway repair cost 2019, and there's all the blue column.
Correct.
For example, not that, but the other list, the Excel list. That That's happening in approximately. I understand there's some other priorities and some shifting things, but that's happening regardless of what passes or not.
Correct. For 2019, we haven't assumed that anything is going to pass. We are moving forward with the funds that we currently have for 2019.
Okay.
We will, if the tax does pass, then what we will do is store that money until 2020, because if you look at the green on the map or in the list, it is a significant cost. Even the tax plus what we currently have probably will not cover those major subdivision redos, so we're going to kind of bank a little bit of money in 2019 and really hit the ground running hard in 2020.
Yeah, because I'm seeing a lot of crack and seal, chip and seal, like that seems to be the majority other than a couple.
2019, a big chunk of it is going to be 22nd Street. It is a complete removal and replacement. It's a joint project with the utilities. New water, new sewer, some new electric in there, new sidewalk, new curb and gutter, new streets, new fire hydrants. That is a $400,000 cost. It is not, we are not paying for utilities. Utilities are paying for themselves out of that. And then we have some 7th Street work, which we will coordinate with Gould, where we need to do a little trenching in front of the Hotel Denver to expand the underground electric from where it stops in front of the Amtrak over to the vault it needs to go to in Blake. So we have coordinated projects. A few of those projects are going to shift because of South Midland and the water line leak, or 6 I think we're at, on 13th Street between Grand and Cooper that appeared about a month ago. And that water line is continuing to cause us issues. We were unaware it was a thin wall water line and needs to be replaced. So we'll shift. That's why I'm saying this list will always be shifting, but the intent is by 2030 is to hit every road one way or the other.
Last question, 27th Street, South Grand to 82. Is that going to be done? It's looks like it's on 2019 or this year. Let's be clear.
That one is probably going to get yanked off for South Midland.
Okay.
Unless we can co-op with CDOT's pricing and we can make something work, because CDOT is doing asphalt from, I think, 23rd Street all the way to Carbondale. If we can piggyback somehow, we'll have a conversation.
Well, have some impacts in that intersection coming up this summer anyway, so it would be a nice time to be able to do that if we can.
It would be nice to do it at the same time and take advantage of traffic control and actually get the striping done one time so it makes sense to motorists. Yeah. But there's other ways to accommodate for that. We could chip and seal the thing and accommodate for a new surface and a new striping surface, which would be significantly less.
Okay. Thanks.
Was this map included in our packet?
This map is not in your packet because it is not part of the resolution.
Okay.
It is the same list. We have just taken the list and just made it into map.
It's really helpful. It is
super helpful.
Good graphic. Is it something that we could get?
It is on your city council drive already. I believe it was put up there 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we've had this conversation.
There's
the
a
Excel
website where you
spreadsheets.
can find this stuff too, Mike, if you want to look for it.
What do you call that website?
Catherine knows where it is.
I'm not able to disclose that website.
Okay.
But the Excel spreadsheets, all 3
It's okay. Don't freak out.
PDFs and this map were uploaded at that time.
Okay, one question I have is, it looks like we're showing South Midland on here being done in 2024, but I mean, am I missing that? The red there?
The red is Hager.
Oh, that's Hager.
Yeah, South Midland is not on this map because it is a capital improvement project.
Okay, I'm trying to open the map up, but since it's from your computer, it doesn't doesn't work for me, you know.
So 22nd Street isn't on here. South Midland is not on here. Anything we know is going to be a capital improvement project that's going to be done elsewhere with other funding is not on this map.
Okay. The only comment I would make is that, and I know a lot of thinking went into this, I would love to see us figure out how to accelerate before, if I'm reading it correctly, Blake Avenue south of 23rd Street is in 2023, is that correct?
Currently it is. With a condition like South Midland that we are seeing this year with that street, it has deteriorated quite quickly over the winter. And we're going to have to probably shift it around a little bit.
In my opinion, that is South Midland accepted, perhaps. That is probably the worst street in town, and I think those folks deserve some some relief on that. So
I would agree with that.
I brought Mr. Boyd up onto Cedar Crest today. It looks like a war zone. So also that is on the priority list.
Downtown Mogadishu.
Now maybe it'd be cheaper if we just issued everyone a 4-wheel drive and just said, this is it. No. Jim.
Yeah, Matt. When you started your comments, you said, things will go on and on and on beyond there. And I just want to make sure I understand what we're looking at here. I think of as more than just what I'll call routine maintenance. In many cases, these are complete rebuilds going all the way down to this subgrade and starting from scratch and like a brand new road. And is it true then that once the road is rebuilt, the thing that goes on and on and on is really routine maintenance, which includes periodically a mill and overlay? Is that the right way to think about that?
Correct. There are streets that were done, Sopers Drive, Sopers Avenue, that was done just a few years ago. We're going to crack seal it this year. In 5 more years, it's on this list. It doesn't label it as a crack seal or a chip and seal. It will probably be crack sealed again. Those are small costs. These mainly are the large costs. We will mix in periodic maintenance on each one of these streets as they're needed.
And
because
once you rebuild Blake or wherever it is, periodically, whatever it is, but maybe it's even mill and overlay at a certain point in time to try to get 40 or 50 years out of the road. Am I thinking about that right? So that will become, those kinds of things are really what will become, once the streets are rebuilt, it's all really part of a routine maintenance plan.
Correct. Most people will tell you that a street will last you 20 years. If you actually are maintaining the street, you crack seal it, and then when the crack seal is no longer working, you crack seal and chip and seal, and then when the chip and seal is no longer working, you mill and overlay it to keep the substructure, which is your main portion of the street, good. You're just talking about wear surfaces on the top of it. So you can extend the life of that street if it's built correctly, and you are correct. Some of the problems with the streets are we can't just mill and overlay them because I can mill 2 inches and the street won't exist anymore. And there's no base course. I saw it today because I saw the side of a street washed out. It was literally 2 inches thick. So, and if there's no base course underneath of it, then you can't maintain that street. It is a losing effort. So you're correct saying that a lot of these streets on here are actually complete removals, sub-base all the way down to subgrade, and rebuild so that we can make it so that we can do our periodic maintenance and keep them good for 30, 40 years.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Shelley?
And at that same time, when you do that full street reconstruction, we're going to do the utilities underneath.
We have one of the lists that's in the packet that's on the mysterious drive you guys can't find, does have that list. It's broken out. There's a utility list, and there's also a curb and gutter or concrete kind of drainage list associated with it. There's 3 lists that are made into the one that you have within the resolution.
Right.
So yes.
Yeah.
It's not needed everywhere. I mean, we have, I think, 80 miles of water line in town. Not all 80 miles need to be replaced.
Right, right. But
So
it doesn't make sense to replace the street if we have old infrastructure underneath. So that's all done.
And for reference, it doesn't make any sense to replace a Mount Sopers Drive if we don't put curb and gutter in there to accommodate the drainage.
Right.
So it's kind of hand in hand. We're rebuilding our infrastructure within these right-of-ways.
Right. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this and the coordination between utilities and streets and everything else. I was wondering if there was, could you just more for the benefit of the public? I have a pretty good understanding of it, but why, for instance, this year, are we doing so much work on streets that are rated good or fair as opposed to jumping right in and hitting those ones that are red? And we've talked about that a little bit, but just explain that from the longevity, the life of the street.
Well, that whole conversation goes back to the question that Jim just asked, is we have some streets that are in good condition. We would like to keep them in good condition so we do not have to expend a large amount of monies to even just mill and overlay. That is a large cost increase from just a seal coat on top of it, which would be a chip and seal, slurry seal, however you want to use it.
Right.
So that's why we would do that, is we have streets that are in good repair. We want to keep them in good repair. So we're spending those smaller dollar amounts so that in 5 years we don't have more damage to that street, and all of a sudden that 15 cents per square foot or 30 cents per square foot is $3.
Right.
So it's a little bit of money up front to make the life of that road extended. so that we don't have to rebuild it too soon. But those roads, eventually, we won't be able to keep up with them. We'll have to do larger projects on them, which is why this list goes well beyond 2030.
Right.
A good analogy for that is car maintenance. You know, you buy a new car, every 5,000 or 3,000, whatever your manufacturer recommends, you have to change the oil. You can choose not to do that and save your $60 or whatever it costs to change the oil.
And
then at $15,000, $20,000, you can replace your engine, you know, so, or you can keep changing your oil and have a car run for hundreds of thousands of miles, so.
Well, or, as my grandfather used to say, stitch in time saves 9, so. Yep.
And the reference for one of those is Donegan Road. That is a brand new road, we'll call it, in the life of a road. We chip and sealed it 2 years ago, and there were a lot of people that were upset because it was a smooth surface road. It was smooth surface, but if you actually got down to the micro level and looked at it, the top layer was starting to wear, the binder was starting to come out, and you started to be able to see the rock in it. When that happens, all of a sudden it's not a 100% impervious surface. Water can start migrating into it, and as it's migrating in and getting to those cracks, it starts blowing things up. That's South Midland. We can't control it because water gets into it, freezes overnight, and blows up all new things for us for the next day. Yeah. So it's really controlling your surface on your roadway. And if you're not, then you're going to lose your roadway faster than you should.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. And I just have to bring up, for the sake of the public, hope there's thousands of them watching,
I hope so.
that anytime we do a complete rebuild on any of these streets, there's empty conduit going in so that we can expand our fiber networks and other needs as well in the future.
Yeah, we'll be working hand in hand with the IT department, the broadband department, with their engineer, and making sure pole boxes and conduits are going in as required, as they would like to see for future expansion.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Rick?
Yeah, I just would really like to say thank you. I know how hard, Matt, you worked on this, Terry, people on the engineering staff, and how you put this together. And, you know, I watched you work 3 or 4 spreadsheets at a time to try to balance this all out. And we do have the street tax initiative coming, and there are people that say, well, you know, they don't need this much money to do this. And, you know, I would challenge anybody to come back to put together a schedule that looks, you know, even remotely like this, and then stand up and tell the public that there's a better way to go. And I know that sounds sort of gratuitous at this point in time, but the point is that this is enormous work, and it's going to contribute to the health and quality of our neighborhoods and our whole town. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Jonathan?
Yeah, I just need to put my plug in for something. Midland Avenue.
That wasn't a plug, by the way.
Oh no! I'm not juxtaposing.
I plugged.
Midland Avenue Middle. It shows here a 2-inch mill and overlay in like 3 years, 2 years.
2022.
2022. Okay.
Middle Midland, is that like my neighborhood?
That's your neighborhood.
Middle Midland.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
So North Midland. Yeah.
It's defined within the.
Yeah. So there's South Midland, which is a street I care about. There's Middle Midland, which is a street you care about, and the North Midland, which is, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But it is. Not to get into street by street, but I guess this is exactly what I'm doing. That street is really, really bad. Mm-hmm. How is that drainage, and how is the potholes that are, I mean, South Midland used to look like
I have an answer
Midland.
for that.
So is that really a 2-inch mill and overlay at this point?
So what the plan is, just starting this year, because these streets are sometimes multi-year discussions, we are going to start at basically 114 and go all the way down Midland, including all the way to Mount Soper's Drive, because we need to. And we're going to clean up all the ditches that are on that roadway, because a lot of them don't function. Some of the pipes are not exposed. We need to do a better job on those things, and it will be a massive project for us. That will be one street crew. The other street crew, which will be using the pothole trailer, and we call it a pothole trailer, but it really does everything we need it to do. If we can carry 4 or 5 tons of hot mix with us, we'll be out and repairing, not potholing, but actually cutting out and repairing, fixing lateral cracks, those kinds of things, from 8th Street basically to 4 Mile. this year. This summer, as soon as we get the trailer. We're supposed to have it 3 days ago. They kicked us a week. You know, we're fighting for them at this point. But there's so much water, it doesn't really matter because we couldn't use it if we wanted to. But that will be a discussion for next work session on how some other things we do in the spring function, and how soon we can get using that pothole trailer. But the intent is we are going to fix everything we can from 8th Street all the way to 4 Mile, which is a significant amount. We will have to hire somebody, which is part of the street rehabilitation plan, to fix some of the larger things, basically from 27th Street to 4 Mile. There are whole sections of road to get us through next winter. We will probably have to cut half of a lane out of to move forward and repair. So we are going to be putting some money into where we know will, in a year or 2 years or so, be replaced. It's just the way it's going to have to be. So you will see a new 2019 list sooner than later, and it will accommodate some changes from the current list. And I guarantee you it'll happen every year.
Thank you.
Best laid plans.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions for Matt before I open it up to the public? Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Anyone in the public would like to comment on this item? All right. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and/or motion.
I'd like to make a motion. I move that we approve Resolution 2019-16, adopting the 2019 Street and Alley Reconstruction Plan.
Second.
I think Rick just barely beat you, Jim.
That's
So
okay.
we have a
As long as
motion
you
by
get it done.
Shelley and a second by Rick to approve Resolution 2019-16, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Glen Springs, Colorado, approving the 2019 Street Plan and Alley Reconstruction Plan. Jim, your button is flashing. Did you want to say
I'm
anything?
good.
You're good?
Yep.
Let's go ahead and call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cope, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure. 5-minute break?
Yeah, just to get the restroom.
Yep.
More meat to eat too, I think.
All right, so the next item on our agenda tonight is the South Canyon study.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We're doing really good on time, so I'm going to skip the long presentation. What we have before you tonight is a biological diversity study from the Colorado Natural Heritage Program. And just to give you a brief background into the need for this study and where we're at with planning around South Canyon, how this fits into that. You know, as you're aware, South Canyon is about 3,000 acres of designated parklands. And we have out there more public lands than all the rest of the public lands in Glenwood Springs combined. Some of the recreational features we have in the parklands out there, of course, the archery range. We have hiking, rock climbing, the new South Canyon Trail system, the rudimentary hot springs that are out there, gun range, and a number of historical sites. Some of the issues that we've talked about over the last couple of years, and I've been out there and toured South Canyon with most of you, just looking at these and talking about these, including social pirate trails that creep on private property and sensitive wildlife habitat, roadside dumping along the turnoffs of Route 134, linked to landfill, and pollution of the tributary there, the stream that goes into the Colorado. Illegal shooting that threatens the safety of visitors and residents out at South Canyon, leaves a lot of debris, as well as vandalism of unmarked historical sites. And then our primitive hot springs, which is plagued by trash and broken glass, human waste, and high fecal form bacterial levels. The South Canyon plan, really what we're looking to do is to increase the health of the water system, assess the historical sites, do an evaluation of wildlife habitat, and planning for higher standards of maintenance as we look at the new trail system, development of good policy practices surrounding that, improvements to some of the existing features such as the gun range and archery range, and how to best manage those, as well as looking at how we address things like the illegal camping, fire mitigation, and management for improvement and possible development of the hot springs. So that's really the goals, is to improve the ecosystem of the canyon. We have done a number of things to date. We've completed a historical study with Mountain States Historical, and have done some preliminary water testing that Steve Beckley and Ron Liston did as they looked at a couple different options for possible development of the hot springs. Currently, we've been working with CPW in the county and local fire department for fire mitigation planning, looking at possible development of evacuation routes in the canyon. We're working with Lori Rink, who's the executive director of the Middle Colorado Watershed Council, on water quality monitoring of the tributary there in the hot springs. And we have done a number of tours and talking with all the gun ranges in the region to develop a management plan, improvement plan for the gun range. So tonight, this study that we have before you is just another piece of that to provide a framework to do area plan, master plan for the South Canyon Parklands. And this biodiversity study the purpose of it is to give us current information on the distribution of rare plants and animals and those communities within the canyon. And the information is needed for conservation management and, like I said, just to provide a framework that as we look at a master plan, we're able to develop good management practices around that, looking at impacts to wildlife and areas for improvements and where we want to protect those habitats. The goals of the project are to identify potential conservation targets, provide a final report and mapping, summarizing those locations, which will give us a GIS layer of species, and especially important, relevant management recommendations that we can use for a master plan. The cost of this study is $18,499, and should council want to move forward, staff recommends appropriating these funds from A&I reserves. Both the River Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission have recommended approval of this study, and I can answer any questions that you have.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
So, the funds coming out of A&I, is there not any Parks and Rec funding that might work better for this? It's not a big deal, I'm just curious.
This was not funded in the budget, so no.
Oh, so it needs to come
It
out
needs
of
to
A&I?
come out of reserves.
Okay. So I thought we had some reserves in the Parks and Rec budget for
They would
things
be-
that come up over. No, not for this.
This is just completely unanticipated. So if you pull it out of an existing line item, it will be something else we're not doing.
Brian, would this contemplate the possible site of a new cemetery?
This study would not. A master plan, which we hope that this study will, again, allow framework for us to develop a master plan, could look at all the different possibilities and uses out in the canyon.
Seems like a quiet spot. If there's a piece of flat land there that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm always hesitant to talk about the cemetery because as soon as I talk about it being full, we suddenly get hundreds of calls. That happened last year, but yeah, it's a conversation we'll need to have, but not within the scope of this particular study. This is mostly looking at biodiversity in the canyon.
Okay. We always want to keep that in the back of our head somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
So about when do we think they might complete the work if we go ahead?
About 1 year.
About a year.
Yeah. So the study would begin in late spring and go through the winter season, and we will get those deliverables, including those GIS layers and recommendations, early next spring, and obviously if we can get some of those recommendations sooner, then we can implement those into some of our current management planning. For instance, things like trail system closures, having to do with wildlife, things like that.
Shelley?
In reading through this, Brian, I know they're talking about more of the rare species of plants and animals. Will it also look at things like elk and other more common wildlife that might be up there, if there's calving area or anything like that?
Right, yeah, there's about
Document
23 different categories of species they're looking to catalog and,
okay.
and survey. But yeah, we will look at habitat patterns and as well as hibernation times in areas where those have sensitivity impacts, things like that.
Okay. Is it also looking at the wetlands, or is that separate? You
This is separate. That would fall a little more in line with the monitoring that we're going to be doing with the Colorado watershed.
Okay,
looking a little
great.
more at the health of the water system there.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Did the consultant give us a kind of a lifespan of this study? I know that wetlands is an example. I know they're not doing wetlands, but legally, and according to the Corps of Engineers, I think they're only valid for a period of about a year. And then you have to get them remapped. And I know that that's if you're using it for development purposes. I can't go out and get a 5-year-old wetlands map and present that to the Corps of Engineers. Wildlife patterns change, animals move around. I know I've worked on projects before where there's, I didn't see it on the list here, where there's a very rare and endangered penstemon that can only be identified during a very short period of time each year. And you have to wait for that time to happen, go check all the penstemons that are flowering, and if it's one of them, then you got it, and if it's not there, then you don't. And I guess my point is is this study, I guess I'm questioning the value of this study. I'm not sure what, if anything, the city is going to do with South Canyon in the reasonably near future. I know we're trying to build a trail network out there, and I think what's built out there is great. I would personally like to see a little more of that. I don't know how that might be affected by this study. Beyond that, I'm not sure what our intent is with South Canyon in general. There was, the proposal this last year that was withdrawn after public comment for a development, a hot spring development. But can you speak to?
Yeah, I'll try to speak to those four things you brought up there.
Yeah.
Did you have a comment? Oh, okay. So to go back, kind of answer the first question, similar to the water monitoring, the Colorado Heritage Program will be utilizing interns from CSU to do some monitoring beyond the scope and time period of this original survey. As any of the residents of South Canyon can tell you, you're absolutely right. Animal migration habits and things like that change over the years, and so they'll be doing periodic monitoring to continue and update this study. The value of it, again, is really to set a framework that as we do finally budget and do some planning around what are the best ways to do some consecutive different improvement projects out there. How do we best approach those in the way that supports the health of the ecosystem out there, has minimal impact to wildlife and the plant life out there. We are not looking to do any development, so it's not needed in that regard as far as putting in buildings or anything like that. But we are absolutely looking for how do we improve the existing amenities that are out there, namely the gun range, support of the trail system, including making improvements to the upper and lower lot, as well as the hot springs. How do we make improvements there, improve the health of the springs and the health of the tributary? And so this just gives us more information to put into that master plan, which we hope to do soon. There's a lot of interest groups that are interested in getting the planning going. We've been sitting on it and have had discussions about it for years. I think we try to put the cart before the horse a little bit with allowing a private developer to come and start working on, well, what are some possible options? And I think it freaked out the public a little bit, thinking we were just going to jump in and start developing things. That was never their intent, and that's certainly not our intent. And I think we just realized that we need to put some data down there first so that we can understand how to develop the best options that meet the needs of the natural part of the canyon, meet the needs of the recreational users of the canyon, and kind of balance those. Does that answer your question?
Very much. Thanks. Jim.
Yeah, my question is just about the funding. I think it might be the same question that you had, Todd, which is whether A&I is appropriate or even allowable for this use, or whether we need to look at some other reserves that we have.
You can pull it out of any reserves that you would like to. I don't think it is we have used A&I to fund studies frequently. I don't think it is a problem. Okay. But it's up to council at the end of the day.
And just the second half of the question. I mean, if that's fine, I'm good with it. But there are other fund reserves.
Yes.
Okay.
We have earmarked and pretty much drained the reserves of the Conservation Trust, which would be a natural match for this for the Lova Trail project, which is partly why we're looking to A&I. And this study does help with the management plan of our trail system out there, which aligns with A&I purposes.
Okay, thanks.
I guess I have one last quick question. If we were to choose to delay this, and we were to say we want to do it next year, we could go through the budget process and do it, next year. Is there an anticipation that it would cost substantially more next year, or could we work with the same people for roughly the same price? I would assume there'd be some.
I don't believe there would be, this isn't a construction project, it's a academic study. I don't believe it'll have any kind of significant increased cost. This isn't a large amount as far as plans go, at $18,500. So yeah, we can put it out. We'll continue to try and push funding to do a plan for South Canyon, but right now nothing is appropriated for that. We're still just doing information gathering as far as the hot springs is concerned, the gun range is concerned. We don't have any further plans to expand the trail system in the next year. Those are still at conceptual level. So nothing's going to be happening construction-wise next year. So yeah, that can be pushed back. That's the council's direction. It might push back a little more of the rest of the planning process, but nothing is being held on hold by not completing this in this year.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Any other questions for Brian before I open it up to the public? All right, is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this?
I'm Ty Richardson from South Canyon. I'd just like to say that I thoroughly support this. If you look at from a price standpoint, this is actually an endemic study. If you guys have been following the Carbondale to Crested Butte trail system, 195,000 6-year study just for elk. So this does lay the groundwork. To answer with Shelley right now, the South Canyon Coalition is working with the DOW or the CPW to get the more flagship species going, which is actually the elk. Perry Will was pretty interested in the greater Paradise area for the actual expansion of the moose population there as well. This, when I looked at it, was actually just on the endemic side, trying to find more rare species. If you actually look at the list, I live up South Canyon. I've only really know what one of these is, the midget faded rattlesnake, which I actually think I did see it. It's a rattlesnake that's about this long with a triangular head, but it's the most venomous snake in Colorado, most poisonous. But anyway, for Shelley, that was my first question when I looked at it. I was looking at the flagship species, which is the elk. To talk to Mike's point, I would just say that, yeah, the elk herds are very migratory. Their patterns don't change unless there's human intervention that's in it. Moose, we don't know that much about it, but there has been moose that's come into the 3 Mile and South Canyon corridor. I would say, though, this would complement, when I see this as 18,000, I think the reason it is so incredibly cheap, I think a lot of it has to do with CSU students. CSU is actually our leading natural resource university, probably maybe in the top 5 in the nation. So I think they'll be using a lot of a lot of student activity there for 18,000. So anyway, I'd like to say we support it. I would like to go a little bit farther and say that the SCC would like to donate the first $1, and if not more, into this program. We'll even probably do some GoFund to help it. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig?
Craig Amishaw, 163 County Road 132. So I do want to thank Brian Smith and Deb for pushing this forward. This is far, far past due. We've been talking about a master plan for South Canyon, for eons. Meanwhile, we just keep taking our trash up there, putting more stuff up there, and we don't study anything. And this city park, it's not really a city park, it's a wildlands park. It has riparian or wetlands all the way from the Colorado River all the way up beyond the city border, past Ty's house and even beyond.
So it supports a lot of beaver habitat up there. And really nothing's happening other than the gun range up in South Canyon and the landfill. But now we've introduced a bike system, and just like Mr. Gamba said, he wanted to do more bike trails up there, including going up to Jim Mountain and Horse Mountain. These are sensitive elk calving areas, and that matters to people that live in Glenwood Springs. It might not matter to people moving over here from Denver and New York or wherever, but it matters to us. And so we need to get a handle on this stuff so we know what we can do. And I keep hearing about 3,000 acres. 3,000 acres. There's only 100 usable acres inside South Canyon. So don't keep talking about 3,000 acres because it's on steeps this way. So we know once we have this study what we have out in South Canyon. And so we're going to know some of the areas that we should stay out of. The soil up there is very sensitive, and you can tell that from all the slides that happened this morning, and there'll be some more tomorrow as well. So the soil up there is very sensitive. We already know there's no evacuation routes out of South Canyon. How are you going to get out of South Canyon in the middle of summer when it's bone dry? You're not. That's the answer. You're not. So let's get this study done, and then next year let's put a master plan forward so we can make some common sense stuff. You know, Mr. Davis, just like a cemetery might be a great use up in South Canyon. We don't know. But let's don't go poking another bike trail up Horse Mountain before we know what the heck's going on up there. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks.
I'm Jerry Ope. I live in West Glenwood on Melray Road, 0301 Melray. Since I've been retired, since I was turned 68, I drive up South Canyon Road 5 times a week, at least. 2 years ago, on the way down South Canyon Road, I saw a dead animal on the side of the road, and I presumed it was a mink. So I put it in a plastic bag, drove down to the Department of Colorado and Parks and Wildlife. The girl at the desk said, "That's no mink I ever saw." I said, "Well, get Will out here, he's the boss." So Will came out and he looked at it. He said, "Jerry, where'd you find that at?" I said, "On the side of the road up South Canyon, it had been hit by a car." He said, "That is a species of mink that I have only seen once before. So if you found that up at South Canyon, there are 2 species of mink up South Canyon." That should be a major thing, just that in itself, to realize that that's an important area. And the other thing is dragonflies at the hot pool in the summertime when they get ready to lay their eggs. According to a biologist that works for Mesa State College, he said they are the most strangest looking, colorful animals or insects he had ever seen in his life. So that is another point that should be investigated further to find out if they really are an endangered species or whatever concerning South Canyon before or during this survey. That's all I have to say.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? All right, seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council for discussion into our motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
A second.
We have a motion by Rick and a second by Shelley to approve the South Canyon study. Is there any further discussion?
You
I
calling?
didn't say.
Oh.
I didn't call the vote yet.
What did you do?
I was pushing Shelley's.
Oh,
button.
I went off you.
I was just reacting to emotion over there.
Wow.
Sorry.
All right. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. I was going to explain my vote, but
Okay.
that's all right. That's all right.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, no. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kaup, yes. Motion passes.
What I was going to say is that I don't think that I don't have a
You don't
problem
have
with the
to.
study.
It's okay.
No, I'm going to. I just think it's premature
late.
because I don't think at this point we have any plans to do absolutely anything else other than what is there today. You know, and there's no intent to build a cemetery or build more bike trails or expand the gun club or do anything else. And so I'm knowing that these things have a shelf life, these studies have a shelf life, I felt that it was more appropriate that we do the study at a point when it might actually be of value when we do a master plan, because right now we have no budget to do a master plan. So anyway, that was my vote. So
reasonable. We appreciate that position.
All right.
Right.
So moving on. Board and commission appointments for arts, culture, parks and recreation, river, and transportation. In that regard, before we move on to the actual contested ones, we have, with respect to the parks and recreation applicants, we have a total of 3 regular seats available, 1 youth representative available, and 1 alternate seat available. We have exactly that number of applicants. The applicants are, for the regular seats, are Bill Coleman, Andrew Muller, Laura Speck. The youth representative applicant is Eason Akins, and the alternate seat applicant is Chelsea Carnoli. So I would entertain a motion to...
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So we're going to appoint all the applicants to the Parks and Recreation Commission as previously mentioned. The motion is to appoint all the applicants to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Motion by Jonathan, second by Todd. Let's go ahead and call that question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kaup, yes. Motion passes.
Okay, next we will go on to the Transportation Commission. We have ballots before us, I believe, for the Transportation Commission. We have 2 regular seats and 1 alternate seat, so I would suggest we vote for the 2 regular seat positions, and whoever receives the least number of votes would be the alternate.
Yeah, there's actually an alternate.
I know, but I think that just, someone's handing in their River Commission ballot.
On the transportation. Right?
We're doing transportation right now.
Okay. Well, that would be Mike Gamba.
Oh.
This must be yours.
Huh.
He
I
gets
thought someone
confused.
handed it to me.
No, you picked it up off your thing.
I picked it up. Okay.
It's okay, Grandpa.
Okay.
We're going for 2 regular members, right?
Right.
Handmade.
Sandy Lowell, regular. Ralph Trapani. Sandy Lowell. Ralph Trapani. Sandy Lowell. Ralph Trapani. Sandy Lowell. Ralph Trapani. Sandy Lowell. Ralph Trapani. Lowell Trapani. And Lowell Trapani. That's going to be shocked.
So I would entertain a motion to appoint
Second.
Lowell and Trapani as regular members and Charlie Willman as the alternate member. And who moved that?
I did.
I second.
So we have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Steve to that effect. Let's go ahead and call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kaup, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
So because we have now, with River Commission, we have 5 applicants, we have 2 regular seats available and 2 alternate seats, so I think we need to vote for both regular and alternates and
on the same little ballot?
Yeah.
Oops.
So I'll do the regulars first.
Catherine?
Yes.
Marilyn says you need to speak up.
I need to bring your...
Okay, so the regular seats, Ryan Davis, Ashley Moffat. 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 Ryan Davis, Ashley Moffat.
Ryan Davis, Ashley Moffat.
Regulars.
All right.
And then for the alternate seats, I have Jared Walter, Elise Asanga. Jared Walter, Elise Asanga. Brett Morrison and Jared Walter. Jared Walter, Elise Asanga. Jared Walter, Elise Asanga. Jared Walter, Elise Asanga. Brett Morrison, Elise Asanga.
6 for Jared Walter and 6 for Elise. Okay.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion to appoint...
So moved.
Second.
That slate of candidates has received the votes. Okay. We have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Steve. Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kaup, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Moving on.
That last little bit of efficiency. It's nice.
7 years and how
Makes me feel like I want to stay.
I don't. I still don't. So, all right. Report from City Administration, City Manager.
1 second.
Not that I don't like you all. That has nothing, no reflection on any of you about my lack of desire to stay.
The EPA would love for us to bring one of you with us to a conference April 23rd and 25th in Denver. So I'm suggesting it be a member not going off before that time.
So I'm out.
You're out. It's weird.
Todd at an EPA conference.
We were high performer for our region, for our area wide. So they've asked us to do a presentation. They're super excited to have one of you. We can maybe decide about it at the next meeting if you would like. You can think about it, look at your schedules.
What's the date again?
April 23rd to 25th in Denver.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm going to be out tomorrow.
You're going to be out tomorrow?
Yeah, and then gone for the weekend. Jen will be acting then.
All right, so party tomorrow.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah, some people are acting and other people practice like you your whole life. You just
all the time. Someday I'll get it right.
All right.
You know it's time to retire.
Okay, Carl?
Just one thing real briefly. You remember before Christmas we had a conversation about our RISD application and entering into an MOU with Parks and Wildlife. As with all things government related, that hasn't happened yet. But they would like to turn that into an IGA. The downside is it's really not ready for prime time, but it needs to go in CWCB's packet tomorrow. I'm going to
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. That's all I have.
Is that it? We're adjourned.
All right.